to Ms. Kwan. Ms. Kwan.
The $4 billion Canada Housing Benefit Agreement was announced in 2017. It's supposed to provide up to $2,500 per year to help families in need with their rent. We know that poverty and inadequate housing are barriers felt by even more of the Black, Indigenous, and racialized people. Can the minister tell us how many families have actually received this housing support?
Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the Honourable Member for asking about this really special and unique housing benefit. We introduced the Canada Housing Benefit as part of the National Housing Strategy to help people as a bridge to permanent housing, people who are in core housing needs, people who are homeless or at the risk of homelessness. We have signed agreements with provinces. We hope all of them come to the table to sign this really important cost sharing.
Now go back to Ms. Kwan. Ms. Kwan.
Well, it's been 2.5 years and families in need are still waiting. Only one province has signed on, and there has been no national consultation on how such a benefit program would even be implemented. With so little federal leadership, the Canadian Alliance of Nonprofit Housing Associations has stepped up and done the work for the government. They have outlined 5 key principles to guide the implementation of the Canada Housing Benefit. Will the minister adopt those principles and get on with ensuring vulnerable families get the rental assistance they need?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, it is really unfortunate that the Honourable Member thinks that an investment of $55 billion and a commitment of a 10-year federal plan of leadership in affordable housing and community housing is a lack of leadership. It is quite the opposite. The Canada Housing Benefit is yet another important segment of the National Housing Strategy that will ensure that people have access to a safe, affordable place to call home. It is being signed by a number of provinces, not just one, as the Honourable Member suggests. It is up to 5 provinces that have moved on signing on to the Canada Housing Benefit.
Back to Mrs. Kwan. Mrs. Kwan.
Well, then surely he can actually tell us how many families benefited from that program. The fact is 2.5 million families are paying more than 30% of their income on rent, and they have been hit hard by this pandemic. Reciting the same message box over and over again will not get them the help that they need. Aside from going forward with a housing benefit program, will the government prioritize affordable housing stimulus spending as a key component of any post-COVID stimulus policy?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, joining with provinces and territories and providing real help to members of the community who are experiencing homelessness to have a permanent roof over their heads is real action. It's real leadership by our government as part of the Canada Housing Benefit. This is a real benefit that is going to households in core housing need, people who experience a core housing need, who need a permanent place to call home. The Canada Housing Benefit is providing real help to thousands and thousands of Canadian households. We will continue to provide that leadership in concert with provinces and territories.
We'll now go to Ms. Kwan. Ms. Kwan.
Well, Minister, I would say that BC is still looking for the government to step up. We bought our first hotel to house the homeless for permanent housing, and the government has yet to provide any funding to them. So now the question to the Minister of Immigration. The first migrant worker died yesterday due to COVID-19. Migrant workers are warehoused in a space with no barriers between each sleeping cot. Others are housed in crowded communal bunkhouses. What action will the minister take to address this alarming situation?
Honourable Minister.
Well, I thank my colleague for the question, and I want to extend our sympathy to the temporary worker who passed away from COVID-19. And of course, we continue to support workers by ensuring that they have the accommodations and the spacing necessary to work when they are here, providing food security for all Canadians. We're also providing support to farmers to ensure that those accommodations are made. And we put in place the regulations and the rules which are necessary, and we continue to work very closely with our provincial partners as well as leaders in this sector so that we can protect workers and ensure that Canadians have access to safe and affordable food.
Ms. Kwan, there's time for a 15-second question.
Well, no one should have to endure such inhumane housing conditions and risk their lives to support their families. We rely on them for the food on the table for our families. They don't have access to health care, and they don't have a pathway to permanent residence. Will the minister do the right thing and grant migrant workers healthcare coverage and ensure that they follow up on the principle that if you're good enough to work, you're good enough to stay.
The Honourable Minister, 15 seconds.
Well, in fact, Mr. Speaker, I would clarify that temporary workers do have a pathway to permanent residence. And of course, that is an opportunity that we will continue to offer those who are ensuring that Canadians have access to healthy, safe, and affordable food. And we will continue to make the investments which are necessary to maintain a high standard of professionalism and workplace safety. And that is